The poultry industry in countries like Ghana and South Africa is under threat because of the alleged dumping of surplus chicken by other countries at price that is way below their cost of production. That is, of course, according to our next guest, Victor Oppong Adjei, who is the chairperson of the Ghana National Poultry Farmers Association. He says poultry dumping has collapsed the industry in the West African nation and also warns that South Africa could face a similar fate. He joins us now, and he's also joined by Melinda Shaw from the Fair Play Movement. Good morning to both of you, and thank you so much indeed for coming through.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Now, Victor, just paint us a picture of what happened in Ghana before we actually take a look at what is likely to happen to us in South Africa.
Great, thank you very much. Poultry started in the late 60s, immediately after the independence, and the growth rate was very high, and it was creating more jobs, reducing poverty, and there were interventions from the government, policies that helped the industry to grow very well. Between 1972 and 1974, the then government introduced Operation Feed Yourself policy, which means the country we have to eat what we produce, which was very good. And eventually, getting to the late 90s, there was this free trade policy which allowed imports into the country. So gradually, these imports increased. And now, as I speak now, Ghana have just 5% of the market share. In fact, looking at the imports, the prices of the imports is so low that we cannot compete in terms of pricing. Therefore, it's collapsing the poultry industry in Ghana. I would say that there is now a serious protracted decline of the poultry industry. Every day it continues to go down. And now some farmers are folded up, workers have been sacked. So it's creating more and more unemployment and poverty onto the people. Yeah. So this is something that we want to alert that it did not start right from the scratch. It was a gradual process. And from 10%, and the imports has taken over 95% of our market share, which is not very good.
And I believe, Melinda, this is very worrying. I mean, he says that South Africa is facing a similar fate if nothing is done.
If nothing is done, we sit with a situation where in the last 6 years, we have lost 12 of our producers of chicken, and they are the smaller producers who have folded. Just this year, not this year, but in this whole process, between 4,000 and 6,000 people in South Africa have already lost their jobs. And the government has not intervened. Yeah. A task team was appointed a year ago to investigate and to make recommendations, and it's now November, a year later, and
you haven't seen the report.
We haven't seen the report. No recommendations have been made, and you see a slow slide in the direction of Ghana, and obviously that's not something we want for South Africa. We don't want to end up with the situation where we buy our chicken in euro and dollar with a rand that's weakening constantly. And that is basically where we're going.
And it looks like we get it. Yeah, I wanted to say so. But then you say that South Africa still has time. You say that South Africa still has time to fix the situation.
Yes, because now it's not very much on them. I think it's up to about 20%. But, you know, the way it's growing, the way people have interest, because the profit margin on the importers is so huge that they always want to do it very big. So if we don't talk about it, before you realize, South Africa will be like Ghana, and over 80-90% of your market share will go to the imports.
But you also believe that the fight against these dumped imports is a regional one for sub-Saharan Africa. Don't you think that is an African problem that should be tackled as such?
Yes, I think no individual country can fight this dumping. You know, when you talk of European Union, it's the European countries that has come together for economic growth. So because they've come together, they are very strong. So if we Africans, we don't come together to form an association to fight this dumping, it will be very difficult for individual countries to fight it, because, you know, those in that business, they are very good, strong. They are financially strong. And it goes to the extent that some of them are even supporting political parties. So it makes it very difficult for you as an individual country to talk about this issue. But when we come like a group, like African Union Poultry Producers Association, then we will also be stronger, and our voice will be strong, and we will be heard all over Africa. So in this case, we can have a dialogue with EU and discuss it, because it's impoverishing the continental people. The people in Africa, they are always getting poorer and poorer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, but Melinda, has something been arranged for him to meet with the government? Because it looks like there's a need for an urgent intervention here.
There definitely is a need, and we are addressing it this week. This is why they're visiting. We've had discussions with certain members of the different groups, and we are certainly hoping that something will happen to change.
But the fact that the report hasn't been released, do you think there's something untoward to it?
It's probably uncomfortable. There's uncomfortable recommendations in there. Yeah. At the moment, there's tariffs. The European Union pays a tariff of only 13.7%, which is almost nothing, and it makes no difference. So the tariff increases that are recommended are probably much higher. They will be much higher, 40% at least. And it's an uncomfortable discussion to have with the trade partner.
Indeed. Well, we'll leave it at that for now, but let's hope for the best. Thank you so much for coming through. Melinda Shaw, as well as Victor Oppong Adjei, talking to us about this situation that's unfolding. All right, let's take a quick break here on Morning Live. When we come back, we'll say our goodbyes.